Alright guys, let's go ahead and put our triangles that we've been playing with underneath our seats. So the reason I got y'all up and moving around and playing with those musical triangles is today we're going to talk about triangles. So there's actually quite a bit to talk about triangles. They're a pretty interesting shape. So today we're going to learn about different ways you can classify triangles. There's two different ways you can classify triangles. You can classify triangles by their angles, or you can classify triangles by their sides. Today we're mostly going to focus on how you classify them by their sides, but of course we will briefly mention the other, which is their angles, because just like y'all remember last week we talked about angles, and those three angles can be the right angle, the obtuse angle, and the acute angle. And those that we learned last week about the angles will really come in handy when we start talking about triangles and the different ways that you can classify them. But for today, we're just going to focus on the classifying triangles by their sides. So those triangles that you have underneath your desk, those are actually one of these three ways you can classify them. So if you look at them, you can kind of tell it looks like which one. Does it look like number 1, number 2, or number 3? Yep, it looks like number 1. The first triangle we're going to talk about is the equilateral triangle. Now this triangle has, just like any other triangle, has 3 sides. Every triangle has 3 sides. They also have 3 angles. That's why we call them triangle. Tri meaning 3. Like a tricycle, when you were little, you rode a tricycle because they had 3 wheels. Triangles, they have 3 sides and 3 angles. Now the equilateral triangle has 3 equal sides. That means if I took a ruler and I went and measured this triangle, that each side would measure the exact same way. Now I want y'all to go ahead and get in your math journal, and I want y'all to start drawing these triangles as I go over them, because that will actually help you later in today's lesson. So first triangle we're going to talk about is the equilateral triangle. 3 sides, all 3 of them equal the same. 3 equal sides, okay? And the second one is an isosceles triangle. Now the isosceles triangle is a little different from the equilateral triangle, meaning that this triangle has only 2 sides that are the same. So like, again, if I took a ruler and I measured all 3 of these sides, 2 of them would be the same amount, but 1 would be a little bit different. And just to point out, this one, the one that I drew here, these 2 sides are the same. This bottom one right here, that bottom one is just a little bit longer. So that's why we call it an isosceles triangle. That's because only they only have 2 equal sides. Okay, so go ahead and write the second triangle and write the definition beside it. Take your time, make it look nice and neat, because this will be very helpful as we continue to learn about triangles, and as we continue to learn about the different ways you can classify them. Okay? Alright, and now is the scalene. The third one is the scalene. And can anyone tell me if they can point out what's a little bit different about this triangle? All right, let's see. Anyone? Well, yeah, it does. It looks a little bit different because it's kind of sitting upright, huh? That I put that little tiny square there. That's just to tell you that that is a right angle. You remember learning about angles last week. What can you tell me about right angles? Go ahead. Yep, that means that it is 90 degrees. So this angle right here, 90 degrees. That kind of stuff is going to help us a lot down the road when we learn about more things about triangles and the things that you can do with triangles. But let's hold off with that right now. So the thing about scalene triangle is that it has no equal sides. No equal sides. So if I took a ruler and I measured each 3 sides of this triangle, not one of them would be the same. But this one, not every scalene triangle has to have a right angle. That's just something that I did talk about later. But this one has a right angle and 2 different angles. Can you tell me what these 2 angles are? These ones right here? Is it a obtuse, a straight, or an acute? If I was looking at these angles right here. Can anyone? Yep, they are acute. That means that they are less than 90 degrees. Okay? And so this is very simple, just 3 ways you can easily classify triangles by their sides. Now, like I said, you can also classify them by their angles, and each triangle has 3 angles. Like this one we already decided was a right angle with 2 acute angles. And then over here we have some, again, these are acute angles. Same on this one, this equilateral triangle has acute angles. On this example, there isn't any obtuse, but when we think about obtuse angles, we think about larger than 90 degrees. Acute is less than 90 degrees, and the straight angle is 90 degrees. Okay? So now that we have covered that, I'm going to pass out a worksheet, and I want you to be able to turn to your neighbor. I want you to go over these different triangles on this worksheet that I have with you. You feel free to talk to your neighbor next to you, get this done, and we'll come back and we will go over it and we'll move on from there. Okay?